To you who answered the call of your country and served in its armed forces to bring about the total defeat of the enemy, I extend the heartfelt thanks of a grateful nation. As one of the nation's finest, you undertook the most severe task one can be called upon to perform. Because you demonstrated the fortitude, resourcefulness, and calm judgment necessary to carry out that task, we now look to you for leadership and example in further exalting our country in peace.
We're here with Harold McGraw, who was in the Army Signal Corps in World War II. Please tell us your birth date.
My birthday is September 24th, 1920.
We are at their apartment in Florence, Kentucky. We are filming for the Behringer Crawford Museum and the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. Present are Tom Fricke, the interviewer, John Gross, and I am Ken Skelton, the camera operator, and Mrs. McGraw is here also. Go ahead with your questions, Tom.
Thank you, Ken. Mr. McGraw, what were you doing before the war?
Before the war?
Yes.
Well, I got out of high school, and then I did various jobs. Worked for a dairy store, and I worked at a Hills grocery store. And then along came the war, and I started going to school. And go ahead.
How old were you when the war started?
Let's see. It was in 1920. Must have been 20 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously, you remember December 7th?
Oh yes.
What were you doing that day?
Well, I was with Mary. We were riding around in a Model A Ford to listen to the news.
And when it came on the radio, you had a radio?
Oh yeah, we had a portable radio
Okay.
in the Model A,
Okay.
and we heard that. Of course, everybody was shocked when it happened, although we shouldn't have been. We knew what was happening in Germany, of course. Yeah.
Right. So you were working at the time?
Yeah, but I can't remember exactly which job I was working at the time. It's a long time ago.
So how soon after December 7th did you get moving into
Well, after December 7th, it was in 42, I took a competitive exam. They were interviewing people in this area. They were trying to find people skilled in electronics because the Signal Corps needed electronic people who understood electronics. I went to school and compared well in a competitive exam, and I started the school and I joined the Army Reserve, and I went to school for, well, I guess I went to school from 42 until June of 43 when I went on active duty, and I went through several schools, including some radar training at that time, and I went into radar after that. I became a radar technician.
What schools and where were you?
Well, these were all service schools, Army sponsored. They were in Avon, Kentucky. They had a big Signal Corps school down there. You remember that, John, or did you hear that? And I was down there for quite a while. And also, they had basic electronics and radio and radar down there. And I was lucky enough to get in the radar end of it. And I trained on the SCR 268 and the SCR 270 and the SCR 271. And we operated those radars out of Avon, Kentucky, which is near Lexington. That's where that's located. And then I got the call to active duty after that. And I went to Camp Crowder, Missouri for basic training. And then I went to Camp Murphy, Florida, which was a radar training school of the Signal Corps at that time. And I was trained on the SCR 582, which was an S-band radar, and it was for harbor surveillance and low-flying aircraft. And then I went to Fort Monroe, Virginia, and I was trained on the SCR 682, which was an improved version of the 582. And it was an S-band radar. And interesting enough, the SCR 582 and the 682 were built by the Crosley Corporation here in Cincinnati. which was just a coincidence as far as I was concerned, but I thought it was interesting.
Was that your choice to get into the Signal Corps?
Oh yes, after I went to radar, electronic school, I was very anxious to get in the radar, yeah.
You mentioned you did well on a competitive exam.
Yeah.
Is that what you wanted to get into electronics?
Yes.
Okay, that was your
Yeah,
first.
yes, I decided it was a good thing to do, and I liked it, so.
You were in the service at this time?
No, well, I was in reserve until June of 1943. Then I went on active duty, and then I was in the service.
Okay.
Otherwise, I had a reserve. I went in reserve. I have a reserve serial number. That's why I went on with reserve. Yeah.
So your training, you were in the reserves during most of your
Yes, I
training.
was in the reserve. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we were committed. We had been promised when we first went into the schools that they needed Signal Corps officers really bad, and we were supposed to get a commission when we got done. But the time we got on, they had so many Signal Corps officers, they couldn't give us a commission, so we didn't have a commission. But anyway, I went to school, and then we went to Camp Murphy. After we took the training on the 582, we were assigned to teams, radar maintenance unit teams. And I was in the 416th Signal Radar Maintenance Unit, that's where I was with. And that unit consisted of one lieutenant, Lieutenant Christopher Wyatt, and I was the technical sergeant, and then we had another electronic person, a staff sergeant, it was Andrew Carson, and we had a T4 who handled the power plant and the mechanical end of it. There was a guy named Red Moore. These two fellows were from South Carolina, but that was a team we formed in Camp Murphy, Florida. And that's where we went through the war as a team all the way through there. So.
The three of you?
Yeah, well, it was four of us.
Four of you. Four of you.
Yeah. And Lieutenant Wyatt, interestingly enough, he was a brother of Jane Wyatt, who was on Father Knows Best on the television show. So I got to know her, his mother and his sister, and he just died, and Chris died in 2001, and I guess Jane Wyatt just died a couple of weeks or 3 weeks ago, or a month ago, or something like that. And she was in her 90s. Yeah.
Wow.
I thought that was kind of interesting too.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
So when you were in the reserves, you anticipated being into the what would you call it, enlisted? Well, in the regular army, or?
Well, I don't know. I never really anticipated anything. I knew I was going into war.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people went through that school, and I knew some fellows that did that with me, but they weren't as fortunate as I was. They didn't get assigned to a radar team and go ahead. Some of them wound up driving trucks and everything because the Army had, well, they just had so many people, they didn't know how to assign them all. That's how the way I could put it.
What was life like here in the States during those years you were in training?
Oh, in the States, well, I thought life was pretty good. I think we all struggled. Of course, we had the ration coupons, and my family did, and Mary's family and all that. And they had to get a certain sacrifice, but really, I thought that life was all right. We got along fine.
You had a lot of contact with your family, and
Oh, yes, yes.
were you married then?
No,
You
I
didn't
wasn't
get
married.
Okay. But
No, we decided not to get married because I wasn't sure I'd come back or not.
okay. Okay. So when after your training, what year was that? 43?
40. Well, yes, it was 43 when I went on active duty. It was June of 43 when I went on active duty, and that's when I went to basic training in Camp Crowder, Missouri.
Okay. For how long?
Well, it was only a month at that time because they were rushing people through basic training, and then I went to Camp Murphy. I'm trying to remember how long that was. That was probably 2 or 3 months because I went to Fort Monroe and I was there up through Christmas because we got orders to ship out overseas in January. I think that was in 44. And that's when we went to the West Coast and went overseas. Went to the South Pacific.
Oh, okay. So you were in that deal.
Yeah.
So in 44 you went to California?
No, I went to I'm trying to think where we went out of. Oh, we went out of Vancouver, Washington, Washington State. That's where we went. We didn't go to California.
Went by ship to the South Pacific?
Oh yeah, went to ship. We got on the ship in California and went to, in Washington State, Vancouver barracks. Went down the Columbia River to the Pacific, and then went down the coast to San Pedro in California, outside of San Pedro. Never got off the ship, just to refuel. And then we took a southern route and bared to the west. We were trying to avoid Japanese submarines. And we went to Australia. That's where we went, to Townsville, Australia.
How long of a trip was that?
A month.
A month?
It took us a month to get over there.
How was the troop ship?
Well, it was okay. It was very crowded, and in the Army at that time, they only served 2 meals a day, because that's all they could handle with that number of people on board. And it was a Danish cargo ship we were on, and they didn't speak too good English, but apparently that ship had been caught over here when the war started, and the government must have enlisted their services, and they used them to carry troops. And but it was all right. Now they had interesting thing happened on that ship. They had gun tubs, and they had a Navy armed guard on there, and for anti-aircraft and all that. But they couldn't communicate between the gun tubs because they had sound-powered phones, and they were all broken. So 3 of us said, well, now look, guys, if you let us eat your mess 3 times a day, we'll fix your phones. So they did, and we took them down in the engine room on the workbench. We repaired all their sound-powered phones. But it created a morale problem with the rest of the troops, so they asked us to cease and desist. So we reluctantly said, okay, we'll give it up. But they got their sound-powered phones fixed anyway. But that was an interesting thing. That was a long trip, but it was interesting. Some of it's very good, you know.
Where'd you land in?
Townsville, Australia. Yeah,
Okay.
Townsville, yeah.
And how long were you there?
Well, I was trying to remember that. Not too long, because I'd say probably a month or 2, perhaps, something like that.
So this brings us pretty much up to the spring of '44.
Yeah, 44, and at that time we went to New Guinea, up to New Guinea, went to Finschhafen, and we did some more set up the radar up there, up on the mountain, and was looking over for targets out north of there, and there was a Japanese aircraft used to come over every night, or every day rather, and we called him Washing Machine Charlie because that's how he sounded. And so no attacks there though. We didn't have an attack, and we were sitting there until we decided the invasion of the Philippines came. Then we had to go to the Philippines.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was it like in the radar? Can you just give us a description of the radar installation itself? And
well, it was a 50-foot tower, and we had an antenna in a radome that sat on top of the tower, and you could go up on the inside of the tower with a ladder to get into the radar because the receiver was up there, and the antenna and the slip rings down below, of course. And we had a hut. You couldn't stand up in it, but you could sit down in it. It would fit on the back of a 2.5-ton truck. That's where the operators sat in there and operated it. And that's about it. It was a transportable radar.
okay, it was mobile.
Yeah. Mobile, yeah.
And it was the tower too.
Tower, yeah. We took it apart and put it back up.
Put it
Yeah,
back
yeah,
up.
yeah.
How often would you do that? How
Only
often?
when we reset it up and take it down. When we're operating, we wouldn't do it. But if we have to move, of course, you had to move.
How often did you have to move?
Oh, well, we moved from New Guinea to the Philippines.
Okay, so
And we went over to the west side of the Philippines on Leyte Island to a place called Bye-Bye. And we went up from there towards Ormoc, and we set it up there. And then after that, the second move of the Philippines came along, and we were going to Mindoro the second time. Now, at that time, let me digress here a minute, but we went to Fort Monroe, and we teamed up with some Coast Artillery people there, And the Coast Artillery guys was the operators of the radar. They did the operation. We did the maintenance. I did the maintenance in our group. So part of them, one lieutenant and a platoon or a little more of his people, went to Mindoro on the second move, and I went along for the maintenance, and the rest of the guys stayed on Leyte. And we went up to Mindoro, and we set the tower up there, of course, and operated up there until, and then we set from there, we moved out to a little island called Apo Island. It's out in the China Sea, and we tracked anything like Japanese fleet, and we got some accommodation for the Japanese fleet coming down there. So that was the kind of duty it was. It wasn't front line, or I didn't have to attack or have a bayonet charge or something like that.
So you tracked aircraft and
Ships.
ships.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
What would make you move the? What would cause you to move the radar?
Oh, well, only when the orders came through.
And why were they?
I don't know why. I can't tell you that, Tom. I never did understand all the orders.
That's very understandable.
But they just decided, they move people around and assets to where they need them, and that's what they did. So, yeah.
Okay.
Somebody bigger than me had to play that. MacArthur on down.
How many people made up a crew versus? I mean, talking about the operators and the maintenance people.
Well, I'm trying to remember how many in Coast Artillery guys we had operating that set, but they did it in shifts because we were operating at 24 hours a day, and we'd shut down 1 hour for maintenance. I was always involved in that, but the operation went on all the time, and of course they were in contact with and reporting information all along. So.
Your 1 hour maintenance, that was daily?
Daily. Oh yeah, we had 1 hour maintenance daily. Yeah.
What'd you have to do?
Well, we just had to check it out, tune it up, make sure it's working normally and everything. Yeah.
Did you have a lot of action on your? Whether you mentioned the one washing machine, Charlie.
Oh yeah. Well. Oh yeah. Yes. When we first got to the Philippines, we got in there on a Sunday afternoon on a Liberty ship. We were on a Liberty ship, and they had invaded, and I guess we came in right behind them, and we was in Leyte Gulf, and and the clouds were billowy white, and it was a blue sky, and out of the cloud came a Zero, 38 on his tail,